If I gave you $1 billion today and told you to buy a business, what would you choose? A luxury hotel overlooking the ocean? A chain of shopping malls? A professional sports team? Or maybe a casino in Las Vegas? Almost everyone would choose one of those. Very few people would spend $1 billion on a giant windowless warehouse sitting in the middle of nowhere. Because from the outside, it looks completely worthless. No customers, no advertisements, no expensive cars parked outside, no sign telling the world what happens inside. Just concrete walls, security fences, power lines, and a constant humming sound that never stops. Yet hidden inside that boring warehouse is one of the most valuable businesses on Earth. Every time someone watches a movie on Netflix, scrolls through Instagram,
orders something on Amazon, transfers money through their bank, or asks ChatGPT a question, there's a good chance that request travels through a building just like this.
Right now, millions of people are using data centers without even realizing they exist. In fact, you're using one at this very moment. And that's exactly what makes this business so fascinating. The more important it becomes, the less visible it is. While the world obsesses over companies like Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, almost nobody thinks about the buildings keeping those companies alive. But those companies certainly do. Over the last few years, something extraordinary has happened. Artificial intelligence exploded. Suddenly, every major technology company found itself fighting the same battle. Not for customers, not for engineers, not even for better software. They started fighting for land, electricity, cooling, and gigantic buildings capable of holding hundreds of thousands of powerful computers. Some companies are spending tens of billions of dollars every single year building new data centers. Others are buying land years before construction even begins. Entire power plants are being planned just to support future AI facilities. Think about that for a second. We've reached a point where electricity has become one of the most valuable resources in the technology industry. Not oil, not gold, electricity. Because without it, artificial intelligence doesn't exist. Cloud computing doesn't exist. Streaming services don't exist. Even the internet itself begins to fall apart. So the obvious question becomes, if these buildings are so valuable, why doesn't everyone build one? After all, if demand is exploding and the world's richest companies can't build them fast enough, shouldn't this be one of the easiest businesses to enter? That's where things become interesting. Because building a data center isn't like building a warehouse. It's closer to building a miniature city, a city that never sleeps, never closes, and never stops consuming electricity. Inside one modern hyperscale data center are thousands upon thousands of servers, each one constantly processing information. Some are storing family photos. Others are running online banks. Some are streaming movies to millions of homes. Others are training artificial intelligence models that require unimaginable amounts of computing power. Together, they create the invisible engine behind almost every digital service we use every day. But here's the biggest misconception about this entire industry. Most people think companies pay data centers for computers.
They don't. The computers are simply tools. The real product is something much more valuable: reliability. Imagine you're the CEO of a global bank. Would you trust billions of dollars in financial transactions to a building that loses power once a month? Of course not. Now imagine you're Netflix. Millions of people press play at exactly the same time on a Friday night. Your servers fail for just 10 minutes. Headlines appear around the world. Customers cancel subscriptions. The company loses millions. That's why businesses don't pay data centers for machines. They pay them for certainty. The certainty that no matter what happens,
their business stays online. And delivering that certainty is far more expensive than buying a few thousand computers. In fact, the servers themselves aren't even the most expensive part of the business. Not the land, not the building.
Not even the artificial intelligence hardware. The single most valuable asset behind every successful data center is something most people never think about: electricity. Because without enough power, a billion-dollar data center becomes nothing more than an empty warehouse. And that's exactly where the economics of this business begin. So you've decided to build a data center. You have investors, you have the land, you have billions of dollars ready to spend. But before construction begins, your engineers ask you a question that could make or break the entire project.
Where's the power coming from? Not how many servers will we buy, not how big should the building be, not even how much money do we have. Because none of those matter if you can't answer one simple question. Can the local power grid support your data center? It sounds ridiculous. How can electricity stop a billion-dollar project? Because modern data centers don't use electricity like normal buildings. They consume it like small cities. A single hyperscale AI data center can require hundreds of megawatts of power. That's enough electricity to supply hundreds of thousands of homes. Think about that for a moment. One warehouse using as much electricity as an entire city. And that's before your first customer even signs a contract. This is why companies like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Meta aren't just buying land anymore. They're buying access to power. Some are signing long-term energy agreements years before construction begins. Others are helping fund new electrical infrastructure just so their future data centers can operate. Because in today's AI race, electricity has become more valuable than real estate. Now, imagine you've solved the power problem. Construction finally begins. At first, it looks like any other industrial project. Concrete is poured, steel frames rise into the sky, massive warehouses begin taking shape. But the building you're looking at is unlike almost any other structure on Earth. There are no luxury offices, no shopping stores, no hotel rooms. Instead, every square foot is designed for one purpose: keeping computers alive. Miles of fiber optic cables are installed beneath the floors. Gigantic transformers arrive on specialized trucks. Backup generators, each the size of a house, are placed outside the building. Massive battery systems are installed to keep the facility running even if the entire electrical grid suddenly fails, because 1 second without power can cost millions of dollars. Then comes cooling. This is where most people completely underestimate the business. Computers generate heat. Thousands of computers generate enormous heat. Hundreds of thousands of AI processors generate so much heat that traditional cooling methods are no longer enough. Imagine turning on thousands of ovens inside one building every hour, every day, every year. That's exactly what engineers are fighting against. Some modern facilities now use liquid cooling instead of air. Others pump millions of gallons of water through advanced cooling systems. Entire engineering teams exist for one purpose: keeping the temperature down. Because if the cooling fails, the servers fail. And if the servers fail, everything stops. But here's the fascinating part. Even after spending billions on land, construction, power, cooling, networking, security, and servers, you still haven't made a single dollar. The real business only begins after customers move in. And surprisingly, they aren't paying for your building. They're paying for something much more valuable: trust. Imagine you're Netflix. Every Friday night, millions of people press play. They don't think about data centers. They simply expect the movie to start instantly. Now imagine the servers suddenly go offline within minutes. Social media explodes. News articles appear. Customers complain. Millions of viewing hours disappear. The damage isn't just financial, it's reputational. Now imagine you're a global bank. Every second, billions of dollars move through your systems. If your infrastructure goes offline for even a few minutes, entire economies can feel the impact. This is why businesses don't buy space inside a data center. They buy certainty. The certainty that their websites, applications, payments, videos, and AI services will still be running tomorrow morning. That certainty is what creates billion-dollar businesses. Because once a company trusts your infrastructure, they're unlikely to leave. Moving thousands of servers to another facility is incredibly expensive. It's risky. It takes months of planning. And every migration carries the possibility of downtime. So instead, customers stay 5 years, 10 years, sometimes even longer. That's what makes this business so attractive. It doesn't rely on one-time sales. It runs on recurring revenue, month after month, year after year. But if the revenue is so predictable, why aren't data center companies making unlimited profits? Because hidden behind every $1 billion of revenue is another $1 billion in expenses. And that's where the economics become even more fascinating. By now, owning a data center probably sounds like one of the greatest businesses ever created. Customers sign long-term contracts. Demand keeps growing. Artificial intelligence is creating an endless need for computing power. And every year, more of the world moves online. So, have you finally found the perfect business? Not quite. Because this industry has one brutal reality. The money comes slowly, but the bills arrive immediately. The moment your data center goes live, the meter starts running. Electricity, cooling, maintenance, network infrastructure, security, insurance, property taxes, hardware replacements, software updates, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Unlike a shopping mall that closes at night or an office building that becomes empty after work, a data center never sleeps. Every second the servers stay online, they're consuming electricity. Every second the cooling system runs, it's consuming even more electricity. And every second your backup systems wait in standby, they cost money too. That's why one of the biggest expenses in this industry isn't buying servers. It's simply keeping them alive. Now, imagine it's 2:17 in the morning. A transformer suddenly fails. Power disappears. Inside your building, hundreds of thousands of servers instantly lose electricity. For a fraction of a second, everything goes silent. But then, thousands of industrial batteries switch on automatically. Before they run out, massive diesel generators roar to life. Within seconds, the entire facility is running again. Most customers never even notice anything happened, and that's exactly the point. In the data center business, success means nobody notices you exist. If customers remember your company, something probably went wrong. That's why operators spend billions creating systems that almost never fail. Multiple internet connections, duplicate cooling systems, backup generators, redundant electrical lines, fire suppression systems, physical security, cybersecurity. Every critical component has another component waiting to replace it. Sometimes even the backup has another backup. It sounds excessive until you realize what's actually inside these buildings. Banking systems, government databases, hospital records, artificial intelligence models, stock exchanges, streaming platforms, cloud infrastructure, the digital economy itself. If these facilities stop working, entire industries stop working. And that's why reliability has become one of the most valuable products in the modern world. But here's the twist almost nobody talks about. The companies making the biggest profits aren't necessarily the ones with the fastest computers. They're the ones located in the right place. Close to high-capacity power grids, near major fiber optic networks, in regions with lower electricity costs, far enough from natural disasters, close enough to major cities to reduce internet latency. Location can determine whether two identical billion-dollar facilities become completely different businesses. One might stay almost fully occupied for years. The other could struggle to attract customers.
That's why choosing where to build a data center is often more important than deciding what goes inside it. And then there's the biggest opportunity of all, artificial intelligence. Only a few years ago, most data centers were designed for cloud storage, websites, and business applications. Today, everything is changing. Training a modern AI model requires enormous clusters of specialized chips working together for weeks. Running millions of AI conversations every day requires even more computing power. That's why companies around the world are announcing investments worth tens and sometimes hundreds of billions of dollars. Not into apps, not into software, into infrastructure. Because every AI company eventually faces the same problem. You can't run artificial intelligence without physical hardware, and you can't run physical hardware without electricity. Which brings us back to the question we asked at the beginning. If I gave you $1 billion, would you buy a luxury hotel, a shopping mall, or a giant warehouse in the middle of nowhere? At the beginning of this video, almost everyone would have chosen the hotel. Now, the answer probably feels very different. Because that quiet warehouse isn't just another industrial building. It's one of the foundations of the modern internet. Not into apps, not into software, into infrastructure. Because every AI company eventually faces the same problem. You can't run artificial intelligence without physical hardware, and you can't run physical hardware without electricity. Which brings us back to the question we asked at the beginning. If I gave you $1 billion, would you buy a luxury hotel, a shopping mall, or a giant warehouse in the middle of nowhere? At the beginning of this video, almost everyone would have chosen the hotel. Now, the answer probably feels very different. Because that quiet warehouse isn't just another industrial building. It's one of the foundations of the modern internet.
Every search, every stream, every online payment, every cloud file, every AI-generated answer depends on buildings exactly like this. The world often celebrates the companies we can see: Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft. But hidden behind every one of them are thousands of data centers, quietly keeping the digital world alive.
And perhaps that's the most fascinating lesson of this business. The next generation of billion-dollar companies won't just be built by writing better software. They'll be built by owning the infrastructure that makes all software possible. Because in the digital economy, the most valuable real estate isn't on Main Street, it isn't in Manhattan, and it isn't in Silicon Valley. It's a silent warehouse filled with servers, connected to unlimited electricity, quietly printing money while the rest of the world never even notices it's there.